So our Zoom meeting is underway. I believe this is edition 137th edition. And our co-host Renee up is of course joining us tonight. And we hope everybody had a great holiday season. We saw you just before Christmas, and we hope that you had a great Christmas season and Happy New Year. And uh maybe some of you had slept during the New Year changeover, but Renee, what did you do on New Year's Day?
New Year's Day, I led 4 hikes at the park.
Oh
So
my.
we do first day hikes. I had about 100 people all together, and WGAL if you missed me on that. Yeah, I was out hiking in that lovely wind and cold all day. It was a good way to start the new year, though.
Not at 8:30 in the morning though for me.
Yeah, it was a little early.
But yeah,
And so 8 people come out at that time, so
okay.
not bad.
That's the only walk I could have done at this point if I was going to be coming. And these retired folks don't get out of bed until 8 or 8:30. So anyway, we hope you all did have a great holiday season. And I think most of you who are tuning in tonight probably have some white stuff laying on the ground at home. And you're now inside in the warmth and safety. And I don't really care what's going on outside right now, but I do care about a special guest that we have tonight because I really believe in a place that I've been advertising to you for 4 years called Buttonwood Nature Center out in Waynesboro, and we're honored tonight to have their executive director, Tracy Holliday, joining us right now. And good evening, Tracy. How are you?
I am well. Thank you, Jerry. And I'm so pleased and honored to be in the rock room tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces, and some of you seeing for the very first time. So I'm going to give kind of a thumbnail sketch of Buttonwood, where we've been, what's happening now, and where we're headed. Jerry has been one of our biggest champions, and he's one of our favorite fellows who has been connected with our organization for a couple of decades now, as an educator and a great joke teller and a good friend. So uh, just delighted to be for your friendship and for your partnership, your educational partnership. So many of you know that Buttonwood began in 1990, established as an independent 501c3 educational organization. And the organization was launched on the idea of somebody who's here with us in the room tonight. Melody Anderson Smith had a great idea to propose to the then curator of Renfrew Park, and that was to consider establishing a nature center at Renfrew. James, as curator, determined that it was not directly in support of the museum's mission, but he came up with an alternative plan, which was to develop an incredibly valuable educational series that would meld the interpretation of Pennsylvania German history with the interpretation of the natural world. So how was the material culture of the Pennsylvania Germans influenced by the natural world and the environment? And how did their material culture influence the environment around them? So it was a really powerful platform for educating school children from first grade initially, from first grade through the elementary series. The first programs were for very young children, a wildflower walk that Melody initiated with a kindergarten class. And then the platform for that program that was later known as Man and His Environment was fourth grade. So a program interpreting the magic and science of photosynthesis, green energy, alongside a program called Flax Culture of the Pennsylvania Germans. And of course, flax is a plant that played a big role in the Pennsylvania German material culture, and plants are the only organisms on Earth that can make their own green energy. So it was perfectly curriculum knitted together, and just grew from there. The series spiraled through the grade levels, and it was a richly embraced by the community, to the degree in which by 1990, well, by the late 80s, the community was saying, wow, this is great, and we'd like more of it. The museum, on the other hand, was recognizing the limitations that it had for funding and staffing programming. So it was James' recommendation, and the leadership of the museum at the time embraced the idea of establishing a separate 501c3 organization, and that was the impetus and the creation of Renfrew Institute for Cultural and Environmental Studies. Our organization fulfilled its mission very well over more than 30 years. And in 2020, an unexpected disruption caused us to leave that campus. So we left with some great ideas for establishing a community nature center and no money. So it took us about a year to get our legs under us. We had, through meetings that I had with the matriarchs and patriarchs of the organization and our community stakeholders, we knew we had strong support from the community. So we proceeded to, in addition to our stakeholders, talk with our benefactors. And thanks to an incredible commitment from the Nora Roberts Foundation, who had invested in our work and felt strongly about our mission of education, put us in a position to go shopping for some real estate with a $500,000 pledge. It was transformational and really allowed us to emerge as Buttonwood Nature Center. So in 2021, we purchased a 40-acre property, which we now own free and clear. We purchased the property with a conditional use order from Washington Township that directed us to complete a lot of developmental infrastructure improvement, a lot of heavy lifting, including construction of a bridge. And that's been the linchpin project that we just completed in September, end of September. So we have a beautiful, strong new bridge that has the capacity to carry school buses to our nature center, school students to our nature center. And the work is really accelerating now. So we've been able to host small private groups, including sixth grades who walked across the bridge for the last 3 years. But this April, with our new bridge in place, we expect to be welcoming the community more broadly. All of this is being satisfied with what we're calling an initial $3 million capital campaign that we're getting very close to meeting. We're discovering that costs have increased about threefold since we launched in 2021. So the pace of our improvements are going to match the pace of our fundraising. We'll just have to be patient and selective and prioritize wisely. But this summer, we have some projects on queue to add a pavilion, to add some high-end composting toilets, parking amenities, and all of the things that will be supportive of our field trips for children and community visitors, so that we can fulfill our mission, which is to help the people, to guide the people of the Cumberland Valley region to become stewards of their natural and cultural worlds. We just completed 1,600 feet of trail construction, which is an expansion of an existing trail network. It is a gleaming example of the way this project is coming to life, because it's really all of you recognize, I'm sure, no matter what you do, it's always about the people. And the trail project was completed by a professional named Sarah Walter, Penn Trails. She provided a significant pro bono reduction in her services and also disassembled her services so that we could leverage some community partnerships. Bartlett Tree Service gave us 2 guys for a day, swept the corridor, and it was a $2,000 pro bono contribution from that group. Cumberland Valley Tree Service removed a standing dead hazard. Messick's Equipment, based in Mount Joy. I had never met Neil Messick, and when I described the project to him and invited him to consider community involvement, he said, our rental fees are 60% depreciation and 40% profit. I'm going to rent you the equipment for 40% off. So their entire profit, because they heard and believed in the project that's underway at Buttonwood. Travis Butts, T.E. Butts, gave us a half a day and a man and an equipment to clear some woody debris. And an academic partnership that was fabulous. The forestry technology students from Penn State Mont Alto arrived with their chainsaws, boots on the ground, and they were with us over a period of weeks, contributing to work on the trail, and also invited to develop some educational materials, which they did. And they provided some materials on the value of woody debris on the forest floor. Some recommendations for land management and invasives management, and made a presentation to our board and staff that I think was educationally valuable to them. So just that, the power of a partnership that brings so many people together. And this trail is going to be a spot of delightful learning for students of all ages beginning in April. And for all of you to visit when you're in the Waynesboro area. Buttonwood Nature Center is the name of our nature center, newly renamed legally in April of 2024. We allowed ourselves to live on that landscape for a little while. Our original name, when we disassociated with the Renfrew campus, we obviously dropped the Renfrew part of our name, and the Institute served us well for those folks who knew us and knew of our work. But if we were introducing ourselves to someone who didn't know us, they often said, "Institute of what?" So it was, we knew all along, but we needed to be patient. And Buttonwood is the folk name for the sycamore tree. And it was historically used with its tight grain to make buttons. So we have some fun cultural history stories, folk stories to tell, as well as natural history stories to tell. It is a powerful, valuable habitat tree, both in the canopy where lots of critters live and eat and rest, and also under the ground. Sycamores like wet feet and often grow along a stream bank, hold the bank in place, and shelter the fish and the aquatic critters. So our place is located along the Red Run with a 1-acre pond, and we have about 40 beautiful sycamore trees gracing our property. So in 2025, in addition to the pond restoration and increased infrastructure, visitor support activities, we will restore that little 1-acre pond that is such a magnet for wildlife, lots of migrating waterfowl, and it's functionally impaired right now, but a South Mountain Partnership grant, along with Triad Engineering as a partner, pro bono contribution from Triad, has equipped us with construction drawings, and we'll bring that. The grant was titled Conserving Wild Wonders. So we'll bring that to functional health and beauty, and it will be a feature of our property. And there are also some pretty darn cool rock outcroppings at our place. Jerry, our new trail, the trail builders incorporated, there was some limestone bedrock up there, and they incorporated that as a seat that now overlooks the pond on one of the turns on the trail. It's so beautiful. It's really spectacular.
Cool.
So we feel like we're doing important work. We're hosting school program visits for students pre-K through high school now. We have rich partnerships with the collegiate academic community and with community members like you who are lifelong learners and curious people who are asking important questions and having fun investigating nature's wonders.
So is the park like open to the public now or after the winter?
So we are in the process right now of developing an entrance sign and some wayside signage so that when folks arrive, they'll know where to park, not to bring their fishing poles, and all of the details to help people enjoy a good experience. And we're expecting to host a ribbon cutting at our bridge in probably late February or early March. We don't want to do that before we're ready because people are going to come streaming in.
Right.
Yeah, but watch for that. This evening, I'm going to send Jerry some links, a couple of attachment and some links. If you have further interest in looking at our projects, we have some project pages on our website. We have a calendar of events, which I can connect, and it's also on the website that includes a lot of really wonderful experiences that you can join, including Jerry's geology presentation and field excursion. I know many of you have some frequent flyer miles as Jerry's followers. So hope to see you then at the very least, and another time throughout the coming year at Buttonwood.
I was thinking about you yesterday, Tracy. You have a fabulous sledding hill out there.
You
Oh
know
my
what?
gosh.
I was just looking, I was talking to people standing at that sledding hill today. I have a picture actually that I was going to send to you
Oh,
that catches the sledding hill in a sideways view.
oh my.
No, that is definitely in our minds as a part of our development plan. Um, you know, a sledding hill with a fire pit and hot cocoa station and music at the base. How fun is that?
That's right. And and me with my new knee, that's not a good thing to be doing right now.
We'll meet you at the cocoa station.
Oh. All right. Well, before you go, Tracy, I have a joke for you.
Okay, great.
You know what the baby popcorn said to ask the mama popcorn?
Oh, I have a lot of granddaughters who love jokes. I ought to know the answer, but you're going to have to tell me.
Where's popcorn?
Of course. Okay, now I'm going to share that with my
You
grandkids.
may do that. And then another one, what do you call a winning uh monkey?
Prime,
A
lay
ch
it on me.
a champion.
A champion, of course.
And of course, you are in my book. You're a winning champion
Uh,
for what you've done out there at Buttonwood and the transition and getting to finally see this property coming to light and becoming a reality. So, yeah, we will be glad to pass the your information on to our members, and you send it to me, and we'll keep plugging Buttonwood as we go here. So,
that's wonderful. Thank you for your support and your encouragement, and an opportunity to partner with you. And I think the same of you. You are I'll just call you the rock star since
we'll
that's equivalent to champion.
we'll see you in a month or two or three. So,
That sounds great. And I look forward to introducing all of you to some of my co-champions. It's we have an amazing team of educators and organizational leaders and partners, and so it's a team sport for sure. And one of them with the impetus for this amazing idea of a community nature center is my dear friend Melody Anderson Smith,
Yep.
who's with us tonight. And
She's right there. Yeah.
yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you soon, Mel.
Okay,
Thanks for your
Tracy,
sweet
thanks for
mail.
stopping in.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks to all of you. Come to Buttonwood.
All right. Renee, you want to do the intro?
I sure can. Well, hopefully.
Look at that.
Did I get it right?
You're on the
No,
way.
I'm in the way.
You're on the way. There you go.
How's that?
You got to hit the slideshow now
Thank you.
up top.
There we go. That feels like it should look great.
There you go.
So, yes, welcome to Jerry's Rock Room with me as the co-host there. We'll get through our sponsors and supporters. I believe that Tracy just did a wonderful job of explaining Buttonwood. I don't think I can beat what she just said. So, yes, go out and enjoy. You can find them on Facebook. I'm looking forward to getting over there. We have the Layer Architecture out in Arizona to do designs for the future. I believe they were one of the original sponsors of the Rock Room. Feel free to email them and let them know how wonderful we're doing. You can tell them all about the snow that I'm sure they didn't get to yesterday. Have Retro Rocks, which is a shop I'm looking forward to going out to because they have some of my favorite things in fossils and gemstones, clothes and albums. Can't beat that. It's over in Lancaster on Columbia Avenue. I'm sure they'd love to see you. We have the Dirtman Report. I don't know if he joined us this evening. I don't know that I saw Andrew's name pop up. But you can find him on social media and on YouTube. He does all kinds of geology videos. And we have Red Lion Telescopes over in Red Lion, just outside of York. Wade Kraut has a great collection of telescopes that you can check out before you buy them, which is kind of nice. You just have to call him or send him an email to set up an appointment to see what he has in stock. Oh, and now we're to Jerry already. So he just leaned back.
All right. Reminder, in 2 weeks, we are off. It's a vacation night for everybody, unless you want to come to Spring Grove and hear a program about the geology of southwestern York County for the Spring Grove Historical Society. February 4th, the Tewksbury, New Jersey earthquake with Greg Herman. You might, if you've been around Zoom room for a while, you remember Greg's done impact structures for us on both Earth and the Moon. He's done some research with the earthquake that happened there last April of 2024. And the other dates will be filled in. We have some fillers out there. We have some people deciding what dates they went to do a program. So maybe when we get back to see you February 4th, we will have all that filled in for you for what you can look forward to. All right, next, Renee. So there's my January 21st program in Spring Grove. It's called Your Backyard Geology. If you're in the York area and you belong or might want to belong to the OLLI program, which is for senior citizens at Penn State York, they're all over the state, actually. I know Steve Lindbergh does OLLI out at Johnstown. January 28th, I'm doing one on my favorite geologists, which center around the laying the foundation down for York County geology. And February 8th, if you want to come hear about gold, you can come to Perkins Restaurant in Hanover. Um, I'll be talking about gold in Pennsylvania and Maryland to the Mason-Dixon gold prospectors. And right now, that meeting is set for 12 o'clock Um, the restaurant that they usually meet at decided 2 weeks ago that they were going to close December 31st. So this Perkins thing is brand new, and they already had somebody in for 10 o'clock for that date. So I think right now 12 o'clock is the starting time. Anyway, next. Is that it?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. All right. So this kind of weather reminded me of a story about a girl who was learning to drive and in the winter, and her father always told her, if you're in bad weather, snowy weather, always follow a plow truck. You can't go wrong by following the plow truck. So she got into that situation, and it was snowing pretty hard, and she got behind a plow truck and followed the plow truck around for a bit. And finally, the operator of the plow truck got out of the truck and came back to her car and said, "Why are you following me?" She said, "Well, Dad told me, always follow a plow truck. It's safer that way." And the guy said, "Well, when I'm done doing this parking lot, I'm going over there to do that parking lot." So anyway, I once had a I I so I have a cousin who when she learned to drive, she thought she was a NASCAR driver right away and knew all the answers and everything. And bad weather came, and mom said something about that mom wasn't going to go out and drive the day on the road because they're so bad. And my cousin said, "Oh, come on, that's not, you know, it's not bad to drive in the wintertime." So her dad took her up to the empty high school parking lot um, because they didn't have school that day, and the parking lot was kind of a little bit icy. And they got the car up to about 10 miles an hour, and he told her to put the brake on. And she stepped on the brake, and she went spinning around and around, and never a word after that about driving in the wintertime. Uh, so anyway, all right, enough of that. I know you're all here to hear our great program tonight. So I'm really looking forward to this one too because uh, he represents he represents actually the number one locality in the United States for fossil parks, and it's called the Penn Dixie Fossil Park and Nature Preserve up in Hamburg, New York. Dr. Phil Stokes is the executive director of Penn Dixie, and he's been honored as a 40 under 40 awardee by the Buffalo Business First. And prior to working for Big Fossil, Dr. Stokes served as an instructor, research associate, academic advisor, and community outreach coordinator in the Department of Geoscience at the University of Arizona, which, by the way, is one of the top 5 geology programs in the country, while he was pursuing his PhD. Dr. Stokes also coordinated 4 multi-year National Science Foundation projects, 3 at the University of Arizona, and 1 at sunny Buffalo, where he earned his BS and master's degrees in 2004 and 2007. His thesis work used ground penetrating radar to search for mastodon bones. Now, that's pretty cool. And to map glacial deposits at the Ice Age Hiscock site near Rochester. And in his spare time, he plays the guitar, ukulele, travels, and brings a telescope to musical festivals for late night stargazing. And Dr. Stokes doesn't know that I'm also an amateur astronomer, and we have somebody else in the room who's also a great astronomer also. So, Dr. Stokes, we want to welcome you to the Zoom Rock Room. And Dr. Phil Stokes, it's all yours, and welcome aboard.
All right, thanks, Jerry, for that lovely introduction. It was wonderful. Yeah, and I got to say, it's pretty neat to be joined tonight. Tracy is a fellow executive director working, in the nonprofit world, and yeah. So I'm a geologist by training. I've worked in various education fields, I've been very fortunate to travel the country and share stories and teach and everything. And so tonight's program, I'm really excited, is a little bit of everything. So you're going to get some history of paleontology, of science, and a little bit about our organization and a recent discovery we had. And so I'm just going to start right into it. And there may be a couple points in the presentation here where I ask a question or two, and you're more than welcome to type in the chat, and hopefully I can multitask here and keep an eye on everything. So, all right. So without further ado, we're going to make this work. Here we go. So my presentation tonight is called "Back from the Dead: Unveiling an Enigmatic New Species from Western New York." And of course, I have to thank our two major funders at Penn Dixie, the town of Hamburg and Erie County. Our government partners are wonderful, and we wouldn't be here without them. Now, if y'all are familiar with science fiction, you know this author, Isaac Asimov, and I've read some of his material, and I found this quote, which I thought was really perfect for the talk tonight. And Isaac Asimov writes, "The most exciting phrase to hear in science, the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, but that's funny." So some of the questions we get at Penn Dixie are, where are the bathrooms? That's probably the number one question. And the answer is in the parking lot near the driveway. So who put the fossils here is another one that we get pretty frequently. And, we answer, of course, it's natural, right? Their Mother Nature and Father Time have given us the fossils. How did we get our name? We're on the site of a former cement quarry that was owned by the Pennsylvania Dixie Cement Company. Pennsylvania Dixie Cement was a large aggregate, pun intended, that owned many facilities from the northeastern United States to the southeastern United States, south of the Mason-Dixon line. And so they had plants, they had quarries. They were pretty big back in their heyday. And after they went out of business, we acquired the land. Why are the rocks called Devonian? You might already know if you're familiar with geology and the history of life on Earth. So here's a really useful cartoon. It's by this artist named Ray Troll. And it illustrates geological time on the right side in periods and eras, right? So Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Cenozoic, those are the eras. And then the periods are Holocene, Pleistocene, and so on. And then on the left side, there's some representative fossils that you might find in each of the layers that corresponds with those time periods. Now, we're at Penn Dixie here, so we're going to be working in the Devonian period, which is smack dab in the middle of the Paleozoic era. This is long before dinosaurs were around. Really, some of Earth's earlier life was represented during the Devonian period. And Devonian is famous for the first land plants. Something called aglyphyton is the earliest one that we know about. And aglyphyton did not have vascular tissue like modern plants, but instead had conducting cells. And it was really similar to today's mosses. What's interesting is there were no leaves to turn sunlight into food. There were no roots to extract water from the ground. Right, in a modern sense, it was very different from most plants. But back during the Devonian period, this thing was sort of the ancestor to all plants, right? It was new, it was exciting, and we still have some of the modern relatives today. So here's an artist rendering of what Devonian aglyphyton forests might have looked like. And what I find fascinating about it, and very, in my view, accurate, is you notice there's not a lot of soil, right? It's essentially aglyphyton growing into cracks in rocks. And you think about what we need to form soil today in modern forested environments, right? You need material to break down, you need sediment, but really it's those organic processes that create the soils that enrich our forests and our agricultural lands. And so, of course, during the Devonian period, if we don't really have a lot of plants on land, then soil formation would not be possible. So once we get agrophyton growing and we get some other things growing, then soils would be there. But those earliest forests were really taking root in rocky landscapes. Now, if you're familiar with the 1989 movie The Little Mermaid, this is just a summary, but if you're not familiar, right, it's a story of a little mermaid who wants to get with Prince Eric. She sees Prince Eric. He's a sailor. He's a sailor up on the surface there in a ship, so Little Mermaid wants to lose her fins and be able to walk on land so she can, have a, swimmingly good time with Prince Eric. And King Triton is not a fan of this possibility, and so he dispatches Sebastian the Crab to accompany Ariel and make sure that she's safe and doesn't do anything too wacky. And of course, during the movie, Sebastian the Crab sings a song about life on the land and how it's dangerous and you don't want to go up there, but life under the sea is better than anything they got up there. So thinking about the Devonian period, at least, as a geologist, as a scientist, I would agree with Sebastian the Crab that even though life on land was starting to take root during the Devonian, life under the sea is better than anything on the land. Here's an artist rendering. This is by an artist named Mike Manasco, and it shows some of the life that was living during the Devonian in western New York. If you're familiar with fossils, you'll recognize the ammonoid, which is the circular shelled squid animal that's on the left side of the screen. These were some of the top predators during the Devonian period. And then in the sort of distance, top center distance, there's a straight-shelled version of the ammonoid. We call those orthocone cephalopods. And between the two of them, they were some of the top predators during the Devonian. Also, this feathery flower-looking thing, that's a crinoid, that's an echinoderm. Those were very abundant during the Devonian period. And then on the seafloor is really where the action was. We had the squid, of course, that were predating other animals. You can see it's coming after a rolled up arthropod. Those are known as trilobites, and trilobites are probably the next most popular fossil after dinosaurs. They were widespread. We find them in rocks on every continent. They were much longer lived than dinosaurs. They were more diverse in terms of speciation. They were everywhere. And what's neat about trilobites is when they appeared in the fossil record, they had these eyes that were complex and compound, and they represented, the eyes of the trilobite represented the most advanced form of vision of any animal alive at the earth on the time that they appeared. So they were pretty successful overall. And during the Devonian, there were quite a few species of trilobites. There's also a shelled animal in here. It looks like a little wingtip. That's called a brachiopod. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. So Devonian period, even though it had all this other stuff, is known as the age of fishes. And fish were really, they had appeared earlier in the fossil record. But during the Devonian period, they had the most diversity ever. And when I mean diversity, I'm talking about number of families. So if we look at the modern environment today, the fish out there, right, most of them are ray fin fishes. So if you go fishing in the Great Lakes, you catch a bass or a trout, that's a ray fin fish. And similarly in our oceans, most of the fish are ray fins. Cartilaginous fishes, those would be the sharks that we have nowadays, right? There's some out there. There's quite a few out there, right? Same with rays. They would fall into that family. But really, that's most of the biomass nowadays in terms of fish. But back during the Devonian period, there were other groups as well, right? It was prime time for fish. Mother Nature had created some experiments previously, and then those animals started flourishing and taking advantage of the new environments where really the fish were the top predators. So also during the Devonian, we had jawless fishes. We had the armored fish, which are also called placoderms. We had something called spiny sharks, which didn't really make it past the Carboniferous period. We had the lobe fin fishes, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then we also had the ancestors to the tetrapods. So if you're noticing on the chart here, tetrapods include amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. All of those, right, including us, can trace our lineage back to some common ancestor during the Devonian period. Now, this is a classic illustration by an artist named Joseph Smith, and it shows just some of the lobed and armored finfish of the Devonian. And so the lobe finfish, they kind of have different looking fins. If you'll notice in the lower left, there's a guy down there. He's got a big fin along the back, and then the fins on the bottom are kind of long and narrow. Those are bony or lobe fins. You'll notice to the bottom left there's a little trilobite. And then on the right side of the image, kind of hanging out near the bottom, you notice there's a fish that has a snail by its head and a snail by its tail, and a bunch of plates. That's a placoderm. Another term is an armored fish. And really those were interesting because their skin was essentially bone. And it was a form of armor or protection that really hadn't been present in animals in the fossil record prior to the Devonian. So the placoderms actually had their heyday back then. They were the apex predators of the ocean. And then we had this critter here called Tiktaalik, who we believe is the ancestor to all tetrapods. The image depicts Tiktaalik kind of coming out of the ocean here and up on the shore, taking a look around, doing whatever Tiktaalik did. And so, yeah, so if you're familiar with social media, there's a lot of Tiktaalik memes out there, right? And essentially the memes blame Tiktaalik for all the problems of modern day society, right? He was the common ancestor, or it was the common ancestor. If we don't have Tiktaalik, we don't have anything else, on land. Of course, Sebastian the crab would say the same thing, right? Down here on the fish is happy as off through the waves they roll. The fish on the land ain't happy. They sad because they in their bowl. So thank you, Tiktaalik. So during the Devonian, Earth was arranged very differently, and this is due to plate tectonics, right? So this idea that the Earth's surface is covered in plates and the plates move around. Incidentally, the plates move about the same rate that our fingernails grow. And so, right, over the course of a couple of years, there's, not a lot of noticeable movement. But over thousands or millions of years, you can really alter the landscape. And during the Devonian period, things were very different. We had the breakup of Gondwanaland prior to the Devonian. So Gondwanaland was a supercontinent. And then after the Devonian, we had the assembly of Pangaea. But in the interim, there was still a lot of action going on. And so you'll notice here, there's the proto-continent of Euramerica. This is where we would have been. Western New York, home of the Bills, go Bills, would be down there south of the equator in warm tropical waters. And then not too far from Western New York would be Devon, England. And really, those two land masses, which are separated by an entire ocean today, were more or less separated by a single basin. And so the cool thing about Devonian period rocks in North America, Eastern North America, is a lot of the fossils look very, very similar to the fossils that you'd find in Devonian rocks in England. Now, we had a thing called an orogeny going on at that time. And no, it's not NC-17 or anything. An orogeny is another term for a mountain building event. And right, when you have plates moving around, sometimes they crash into each other. And during the Devonian period, we had the Acadian orogeny, which is a mass of islands and some continental crust that were off the eastern coast, or what's now the eastern coast of North America. They were colliding with the North American continent, or the North American craton. And essentially one plate was pushed on top of another. Something I learned in grad school is when you're building mountains in one area, you're pushing land up. well, those plates are solid and they flex. And so elsewhere, you have to push land down. And so, yeah, we were forming mountains, kind of eastern New York State, eastern Pennsylvania, probably, I think, where Buttonwood is now would have been in those mountains. But western New York State, western Pennsylvania was submerged with water. And during the Devonian period, we call that basin the Catskill Basin. And it happened to be a shallow marine environment, which was perfect for coral reefs and an abundance of life. So here's a geological map that shows New York State. And the Devonian rocks are in this kind of mint green color. You'll notice that significant portion of the rocks in New York State are from the Devonian period. And then the western side of the state, just on the shore of Lake Erie, is Penn, Dixie. So here we are right in the middle of the Devonian rocks. Now, Lake Erie is very interesting if you're familiar with lake effect snow. We're currently in the season for it, and it can dump 3 feet of snow at any given time. But in the 1960s, I find this very, very interesting. It's an image from U.S. Geological Survey. It's most likely an airplane image. But really what's going on here is in May, we still have ice on the lake. And we don't have ice on the lake anymore. Nowadays, the lake doesn't freeze over during the winter. So we end up with even more lake effect snow. But back in the 60s, there was still quite a bit of ice here. Right, so that's what you're seeing on the left side. And then on the right side of the image, I'll point out a couple things. So on the lake shore, there's this plant here. This was the Pennsylvania Dixie cement plant. And then here's a shot. It had a couple different owners historically. It was also known as Federal Cement and also Bessemer Cement. But really, Penn Dixie was the big one that took it over. Penn Dixie was a big employer in the area, one of the largest in our town during this time. And then they actively quarried shale about a mile away in a small neighborhood. It's called the Steelton neighborhood. So Buffalo during the 60s was big for steel production and concrete or cement for concrete making. And so here we are. So here's an idea of what the quarry was like. It was about 100 acres in size, not too far from a neighborhood. Penn Dixie Cement itself was formed in 1926. By 1970 or so, local quarrying had ended. Penn Dixie Cement filed for bankruptcy in 1980, and they were disposed in 1982. All right, disposed means the assets were liquidated and they went away forever. So by Penn Dixie Cement. But they left behind this really big quarry of open land where all the vegetation and soil had been stripped away. So this point in the story, you could imagine where you have a big vacant hole in the ground, kind of in the middle of town, and guess what? It became the perfect place for teenagers to party. So it was locally known as the Pits. It also is a great place for people to illegally dump trash. So people would throw their old tires here, or if they had home remodeling projects, they would dump the windows and the siding and the roofing tiles. And for about 2 decades, this place was a derelict quarry that was totally abused. It's also a place where people did target shooting. I gotta say, a lot of beer was consumed here because we're still finding broken glass, and it was an eyesore really. And so in the early 1990s, the town of Hamburg had a proposal to turn it, to develop it and turn it into a waste transfer station. And right from an economic standpoint, from a standpoint of rehabilitation, the town really wanted to do something with this abandoned former quarry that had now been filled with garbage. And so there was a proposal on the table to turn it into a waste transfer station. And as you can imagine, the people in the neighborhood nearby were not very happy with that proposal. And so there was a group of moms who lived in the neighborhood, Eileen Ike, Elizabeth Gonsiorik, and Sheila Kelly, and they had no formal experience in politics or advocacy or anything really. They were just interested in not having not having this land developed as a waste transfer station. And so they actually joined forces with paleontologists and fossil collectors who had been sneaking into the area to collect for fossils. And in the 1990s, the ladies here started a campaign. And so I've got a copy of a letter here from 1990, and they write to the town officials. We bring before you a most unusual proposal to set aside the Penn Dixie fossil beds as a geological sanctuary. So they had some helpers, right? We didn't do this alone. Here's Professor Gordon Baird from SUNY Fredonia, State University of New York at Fredonia. And Gordon Baird had the vision for a fossil park used solely for the purpose of fossil collecting. And he says that such a unique landmark would draw people from all over New York, plus adjacent states and Canada. Dr. Gordon Baird. He had a partner in research, Dr. Carlton Brett, who's still teaching at University of Cincinnati. Actually got to see him in November. I think he's about 77 years old now and still as prolific a scientist as ever. And so Carlton Brett, Gordon Baird are two of our founding figures alongside Liz, Sheila, and Eileen. And Carlton Brett also helped with the letter writing campaign, saying this was an invaluable teaching and reference locality. And he says, despite the fact that some of the rocks have been looked at for years, there are always new things that will turn up. And that turned out to be very prophetic, as we'll see. So here's Penn Dixie in sort of the modern sense. And today, our organization, Penn Dixie Fossil Park and Nature Reserve, owns and operates about 54 acres. So not the entirety of the original quarry, but a lot of it. And Eileen and Sheila and Liz succeeded. So in 1993, they formed a nonprofit organization. In 1995, the town of Hamburg purchased the land and deeded it to the organization for purposes of fossil collecting. So we're actually celebrating our 30th year this year. And you can see there's people out there collecting fossils just like it was envisioned. We have a lot of groups out there every year. Our attendance is somewhere between 15 and 20,000 every year. We get a lot of kids. We get a lot of school field trips. You can see on the top right here, one of our educators, Stan, is looking on. Stan's wearing this beige colored ball cap. And we have a lot of fossils. The founders weren't kidding. There's millions of fossils at Penn Dixie. And we find them in several different layers. There's this limestone layer, which you can see here. It's called the Tishner limestone. And then above it is the Wyndham shale, which comprises most of the surface area at Penn Dixie. And then there's some specific beds within the Wyndham shale where we find the trilobites and the other famous fossils. So if you're into fossils and this sort of thing, right, in the rock room, I think sounds like the right kind of audience. If you're in New York and collecting fossils, I recommend this book, which is available from the Museum of the Earth bookstore. Museum of the Earth, also known as PRI. They're a really great partner. And you can see some of the trilobites here. Our famous fossil is the Eldridgeops rana trilobite, which is named after Dr. Niles Eldridge from the American Museum of Natural History. We were really honored to have him visit this past summer. And then we have some other trilobites as well, which are uncommon to rare, but we still find them every summer as well. If you're into clams and brachiopods, we are the place for you. This is the Devonian period, so brachiopods have their heyday. They are bivalved animals. On first glance, they're similar to clams, but really internally they're very different. They have symmetry that the bivalves don't. Of course, the bivalves have symmetry that the brachiopods don't, but that's a whole other story. We also have gastropods, which is a fancy term for snails, and cephalopods, which were those predatory squid that I showed you earlier. Of course, being a reef-like environment, we find corals as well as bryozoans and crinoids. These are all different types of animals, but they make up a substantial portion of the Devonian coral reef. When all these fossils are prepared, they are spectacular. We have a lot of collectors that come out and they're looking for museum quality specimens. And so you can see some of the examples of the different types of fossils that they find here. We also had a really cool discovery in April of 2023. We had two of our off-duty employees who were working on site find these two fossils that are depicted in the middle here. The story goes they were out digging, and they were digging in March because they're kind of diehard collectors. Their names are Jonathan Hogue and James Hanna, and they were out there digging for trilobites, or between the two of them, they have thousands of trilobites in their collections. And James found the specimen above here, and it was really mysterious. And so he didn't know what it was exactly. So he sent it off to the guy on the right, on the image on the right here, Dan Cooper, who is on the far right here. He's I would say he's wearing a blue shirt and a bucket hat, but they're both wearing the same outfit. But Dan Cooper here on the very far right began to prep it. Dan is a professional fossil preparer. If you're familiar with the story of that baby Stegosaurus that was just sold for millions of dollars, that was discovered by Dan's son, Jason. So Dan is pretty legendary in the fossil world. He's prepared specimens for museums and everything. And so he agreed to take on the prep work for this mysterious top specimen. Well, about a week later, Jonathan Hogue was collecting with James again, and he found the specimen below. And it looked similar enough to the top one that Jonathan felt that it would be worth sending that off for preparation as well. So Jonathan sent it to the other guy on the right here, Malcolm Thornley, who's wearing the Penn Dixie t-shirt. And Malcolm has a lot of preparation experience for the Royal Ontario Museum and other museums around the world. And he's also an echinoderm expert. And the guys suspected this was an echinoderm. So we get, I don't know, we get about 5,000 kids every spring for field trips. And I remember coming out to the site one day, right, to check on things. And actually, it might have been a Saturday. So the field trip kids weren't on site, but I was on site to do something HR related for one of the field trips. We have a lot of staff. We have 25 to 30 employees, and there's always something going on. So I came out to check with everything, and I was getting out of my car, and Malcolm Thornley comes up to me, and he's got a rock wrapped in aluminum foil, and she pretty much wouldn't let me get out of the car. And he says, you gotta see this thing. And so I said, okay, hang on a second, Malcolm. I got to take care of something else here. So go to do that. And in the meantime, Malcolm pulls the foil off the rock, and he shows me the specimen in the bottom. And he says, have you ever seen anything like this? And I said, no. And disclosure, I'm not a paleontologist. I'm a geologist, and right, I don't have the coursework or really the familiarity with these things. And he says, do you know what this is? And I said, no. And he says, we didn't know either. And so Malcolm had sent pictures of these fossils to some others who are essentially up the food chain in terms of the paleontology community. And eventually don't want to get ahead of myself here, but eventually the specimens worked their way up to Carlton Brett back at the University of Cincinnati, one of our founding figures, and another gentleman named Dr. Ronald Parsley from Tulane. And in the chain of emails, they're debating what this is, and someone chimes in and says, this must be a hoax or some other thing going on here, because we don't find this type of animal in the Middle Devonian period. It was extinct by then. And there's more debate, but then if you'll notice here in these fossils, there's actually some bits and pieces of other specimens in here. On the left side of the top rock, for example, there's some horn corals, like the ones I showed you earlier. And those horn corals are index fossils that tell us that these rocks are from the Middle Devonian period. And so it couldn't be a hoax, or it couldn't be a mix-up, but it had to be a new species of this type of echinoderm. that had not previously been discovered. And so it was pretty exciting to be part of that email chain where they said, oh, this is a new species. We'll talk about that in a second. But what was super cool about it was the story got reprinted in 77 newspapers. So we had, the news come out and everything, and interview Jonathan and James. And then we had an international group that came out a little later in the summer, and that made the front page of the news. And then we also made one of the smaller local papers called The Bee, which we'll talk about that in a second. So our staff were interviewed, and it was pretty cute because these guys are fossil collectors and everything, and but they're very down to earth individuals. And so if you're familiar with the story of scientific discovery, right? So Archimedes was the Greek mathematician. He determined that if you get into a bathtub, the volume of water that's displaced by getting in the tub is equal to the volume of the body cavity, right? And right, so right, we take that knowledge for granted now, right? But essentially, Archimedes' work was used to discover density, this concept of density. And so when Archimedes made his discovery that, right, he gets in the bathtub and the water goes up, he said, "Eureka!" And when our guys were making their discoveries, they said, not Eureka, but holy crap. And what was funny to me is they actually reprinted that in the newspaper, in the Bee. Holy crap. So this is what the animal was. It's called a carpoid. It's got a more technical name as well, but informally we call them carpoids. And they're really these sort of odd cup-shaped things with a tail. And like I said, I had no idea what these were before the discovery, but I learned a bit. And what's really cool about carpoids is you can see here they're asymmetric. So right, most things in nature have symmetry, right, of either external symmetry, it appears the same, or internal symmetry. For example, like we have two kidneys, right? We have two eyes, we have two kidneys, we have two lungs. The carpoids didn't have any of this, and they're one of the very few animals in nature that didn't have symmetry. They had these little tails, which we think they used to attach to the ocean floor. Maybe some of them could crawl a bit. And then they had these cup-like features, which they used to filter water. These were echinoderms, so they are related to sea stars and urchins and sand dollars, but really a kind of a different beast. And so on the left and right, you can see two images. These are the specimens that were prepared for publication. Currently, there's a publication that's being drafted by Dr. Parsley and Dr. Brett that will introduce the carpoids to the scientific world. The one on the left is the specimen that was found by James Hanna. That's the type specimen that will be going to the Museum of the Earth in Ithaca. And then the one on the right is the one found by Jonathan Hogue. It's not as complete as the type specimen, but because both of them got donated to science, James gets named as the type specimen for like forever and ever, and then Jonathan will actually have the new species named after his family name of Hogue. So it'll be something Hogai. So here's another example of carpoid. This is from the Lower Devonian period in Australia, and incidentally, this was discovered in 2023 as well. Just to give you a sense of how these things looked, they had like a little feeding tube at the top because they were echinoderms. They also had the anus located adjacent to the feeding tube, so they had to be careful. But yeah, they were nature's oddballs for sure. Now, if you're familiar with paleontology, you may know this quote. So see, 1989, same year as The Little Mermaid, someone said, life is a copiously branching bush, continually pruned by the grim reaper of extinction, not a ladder of predictable progress. Does anyone know who that is? Who may have said this? If you want to type in your chat here, you're welcome to do so. Anyone want to take a guess who said that? All right. Well, give you a hint. It was not Sebastian the Crab. Not him. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Stephen Jay Gould. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So it was, in fact, Stephen Jay Gould, and 1989 was a great year for movies, for literature, and here we have Stephen Jay Gould in his publication, Wonderful Life. Right, this is a book about Cambrian fauna in the Burgess Shale, and oh, hang on, Wonderful Life. Yep, exactly. So Stephen Jay Gould, right, has this groundbreaking publication that reexamines the fossils found in the Burgess Shale, and really, right, paleontology is the science of discovery, but it also involves a lot of interpretation and reinterpretation, and sometimes challenging. It requires challenging the traditional views, right? We're familiar with the story of Charles Darwin and how, right, his theory of evolution really changed our understanding of life on Earth. Well, Stephen Jay Gould, I would say, was also a pretty major figure. And so Stephen Jay Gould looked at, right, so he looked at the Cambrian period, which is also known as the Cambrian explosion, right? And I found this image online. I think it's kind of funny because it's like a literal explosion of Cambrian life, right? Here's, Anomalocaris coming right at us and everything. But really what the Cambrian explosion was a time when life became very diverse, right? We went from, simple one-celled organisms and algae to a lot of the modern families and groups that we find today. And so Stephen Jay Gould looked specifically at the echinoderms. And what was great about the echinoderms, right, they're, if you're a scientist and everything and into this, they're awesome. If you're, not into the nerdiest of the nerdy stuff, you may say, well, who cares about some echinoderms, right? I want T-Rex. I want a movie about velociraptors chasing people through a park, right? We're not caring about the echinoderms here. But if you're truly into the nerdiest of the nerdy, you'll find that echinoderms are perfect because there's a lot of them, right? So for fossils that are of dinosaurs, there's really not too many specimens out there. Right, which is why they go for millions of dollars. But for the invertebrates and for the echinoderms, there's an abundance. And so we can track their diversity and their evolution through time. And during the Cambrian period, there were quite a few of them. And so this paleontologist named Imran Rahman grouped them together here in what I'd say is a very compelling visual diagram. And so what he shows is sort of a division between radial echinoderms, and so radial meaning showing radial symmetry, and pre-radial, which do not have that symmetry. So if you think of a radial echinoderm, think of a sea star. We also call them starfish, right? Even though they're not fish, but sea stars have five-sided symmetry. Well, so do sand dollars. Urchins have that same symmetry, although it looks a little bit different, right? Those are symmetrical echinoderms. Well, Mother Nature, while it was experimenting with the echinoderm family, didn't start out with having symmetrical echinoderms. Mother Nature created these asymmetric echinoderms. And our carpoid is right there. It's the third one up. Carpoids are also known as solutans, S-O-L-U-T-A-N-S. And so there's our Cambrian carpoid there. As an asymmetric pre-radial echinoderm. And so if we go back to Stephen Jay Gould here, he argued, so on the top left, there's this something called the cone of increasing diversity. And so prior to Gould's work, there was this interpretation that life became more and more complex as time went on, right? We start with algae and we go up to dinosaurs and humans and everything. Gould says, no way, Jose. The cone is wrong. Evolution is not progressive in that there's no increase in the complexity after a species originates. And really, for most branches of the animal kingdom, death follows diversification. And so in practice, what that means is that many species are experimental and really exist only for a short time before the Grim Reaper plucks them away. And so What that means for the echinoderms, for example, is during the Cambrian period, we had great diversity in the different body forms of echinoderms, but thanks to various extinction events, today we're only left with three of the main groups, right? Here's the urchins, the sea stars, and the crinoids, right? Everyone else got wiped out earlier. Now, you could argue that there is diversification and adaptation within the surviving families, right? We certainly see evolution moving, through time, but really the Gould model shows that Mother Nature kind of, comes up with an idea, splits it off into different branches, and then after a while, only a few branches remain. Now, the story of discovery here, is anyone familiar with this animal? You can pop this one in the chat if you are familiar with this one. Yeah. All right, the coelacanth. So this is a coelacanth. This is actually the preserved original coelacanth that was discovered in 1938. And the discoverer was a woman named Marjorie Courtenay Latimer. And so she was working at a museum, and she had a thing where she would go out to the local fishing docks every day, or the shore, and see what the fishermen brought in. And so she could bring back any specimens that she found that might be useful for the museum. And so one day she goes out there, and she finds this weird fish. And so she wrote. She wasn't a paleontologist per se. She was a bird expert. She was an ornithologist. And so she wrote to L.B. Smith, who is a Rhodes University ichthyologist. And this guy was pretty excited, right? This is 1938. It was in December, which is actually the summer in the Southern Hemisphere in South Africa. But, it was 1930s, so, right, you had to write letters and whatnot. So she writes to L.B. Smith, and he writes back after seeing sketches. I am more than ever convinced on reflection that your fish is a more primitive form that has yet been discovered. So in February of 1939, 2 months later, he traveled to the museum and he saw the fish. And he wrote that the first sight hit me like a white hot blast and made me feel shaky and queer. My body tingled. There was not a shadow of doubt, scale by scale, bone by bone, fin by fin. It was a true coelacanth. And so he named the new species after Marjorie. And so we know that first coelacanth species as Latimeria columnae. So coelacanth's a cool story, right? But why is it cool? So here's a fossil of the coelacanth from the Cretaceous period, right? Which prior to 1938, we didn't think they were still around. Coelacanth was thought to be extinct. So we have a fossil here on the left. Here's the modern coelacanth on the right. There it is, swimming in the waters off of South Africa. Here's our chart from earlier on, if you remember. And so the orange or the yellow star here depicts the bottom star, that the Cretaceous coelacanth fossil, and then the top orange star depicts, or the yellow or orange star depicts the modern, right? And so really what the discovery meant was that even though we thought the coelacanth was extinct, it actually extended the coelacanth family tree all the way up into modern times, right? So super cool, big deal for science. We found, a 65-year-old relic, that 65 million year old relic, still swimming in the oceans today. So, right, super exciting. In paleontology, this is known as a Lazarus taxon. If you're familiar with the Bible, you'll know the story of Lazarus, who was a deceased man who was brought back to life by Jesus, right? His faith was, and the faith of his family was what did it. Well, in paleontology, Lazarus taxon is a species. Taxon is another term for species that disappears from the fossil record only to appear millions of years later. And so just like Lazarus, the carpoids, salutin carpoids, disappeared for some 25 to 30 million years, and their discovery at Penn, Dixie brought them back from the dead, and extended the family tree. So if we could go to the Rachel cartoon from earlier, I've put the stars here. So previously, we know carpoids appeared during the Cambrian, according to the fossils. We thought they were extinct by the end of the Silurian period, or the start of the Devonian, but now we know that the carpoids were alive, probably through much of the Devonian period as well. So they are, just like the coelacanths, the carpoids are another example of a Lazarus taxon. Now I don't think we have any carpoids today. They didn't make it, but right, they're still a cool story. And so with that, I will thank you for your attention and attendance this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You want to put the questions in the chat, or you can verbally?
Yeah, however anyone prefers to do it is fine.
Yep. Great job.
Thank you.
I was wondering, after you acquired that property, how long did it take to clean all that mess up that was left behind?
Yeah, so we joke that it's ongoing, but it's the truth. The first few years, we had large dumpsters that were donated, and those were filled with the tires and the other trash. We had to haul the cars out, and it wasn't me, I was a kid. But we had volunteers that were dedicated and would haul the cars out that were left behind, and the boats and the bigger things. And then nowadays, we mostly spend our cleanup efforts focused on broken glass and rusty nails and bullet casings. So we're down to the little stuff, but there's still a lot of it there.
So what's like the day fee to go in there and collect?
So for general admission, I believe it is $15. I'd have to take a look here. I should know this, but yeah. So for general admission, it's $16 for adults, 15 for seniors, military, and students, and 13 for children. And then we have an assortment of group tour options as well. So like the NAGT group, they'll be getting in for a group rate, which is $10 a person. And then we also offer something called a private expedition, which is a 2-hour guided tour where you get your own guide for 2 hours, and it's very much in the style of field paleontology. That's $75 a person. So we have quite the range of tour options.
Okay. Just looking at the chat. Dick Cooper is wearing his Penn Dixie shirt tonight. I know he was there some years ago.
Yeah, we get Dan out. We're very fortunate. He's a member and everything. He probably comes out every other year for a dig. He's got. I don't know if you're familiar. Is anyone familiar with Dan? Like met him at conferences or anything?
What's his last name?
Cooper, Cooper.
Oh.
So Dan is like international man of mystery. Oh yeah, here we go.
Dick Cooper. Dick's showing you his shirt there.
All right, Dick, thank you for your support. That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of our classic designs. Yeah. That looks like maybe an early 2000s sweatshirt. Yeah, so Dan's been a member forever. And when I mentioned paleontologists and fossil collectors that snuck in the 70s and 80s, Dan was among them. He was part of the Cincinnati Dry Dredgers group. They were really, obviously after fossils, but really instrumental in our founding, right? They were some of the folks that sent letters to elected officials that help with preservation. And we're very fortunate. We see Dan every few years. He travels a lot. He's like I said, he's international man of mystery. He owns properties around the country and leases properties around the world where he has exclusive rights to dig for fossils. And so he'll spend, say, like weeks at a time at a remote location in Spain, and he'll ship back literally tons of specimens, where he then prepares at his laboratory in Cincinnati. He's got a team of fossil preparators. They'll prepare the specimens, and some will be sold, some will be given to museums. If you hang out with Dan, he'll make a trade with you. He's very, very active in the paleontology community.
Okay. How much walking is involved?
That's a good question. So I would say from the parking lot to our main collecting area is probably about 200 yards distance. So some folks just show up and they'll do the initial walk and they'll just hang out in one spot. But some folks, if you really want to see the property and everything, you might end up hiking a mile or two in a day. Some of our visitors will try many different areas. Some of them will just park themselves in one spot and they'll just have great luck, and then they'll head out.
Our co-host Renee wants to know, do you inspect with what is found or catalog anything?
Yeah, so at this time, we don't really. So basically, everything that is found by visitors can be taken home. If we had a visitor center on site, we might, ask for photos of things more often. But really, if something is rare or unique, we might ask for a photo. But by and large, everything that's found just gets taken out, and we won't know unless someone sends us a photo later on and says, "Hey, look at this cool thing I found." We'll post it on social media. But yeah, we're still a relatively small organization.
What safety equipment is required?
Yeah, so probably for yourself, for your body, we'd want you to have protection from the sun. As you saw in the image, there's no or not really much vegetation out there. So you want a shade hat and long sleeves probably, and sunscreen. And then you want eye protection if you're going to be hammering the rocks. You want to protect from flying debris. So safety goggles are very important. Most of our visitors who come out, who spend time hammering, will bring hammer, chisels, gloves, and knee pads or kneelers. That's sort of the main stuff. Some folks will get really fancy with the quality of their tools and everything. We recommend a 5-pound sledgehammer and a chisel. And we do offer tools for rent if you don't want to bring your own or you don't have them. $10 will get you a rental of chisel, hammer, 2 hammers, and safety goggles and a bucket.
All right. And I see you're about 5.5 hours from York, Pennsylvania, where I'm based at. For reference sakes, folks. So you can make it an overnight stay.
Yeah, we do have hotels in the area. We have had folks, make the overnight drive and that sort of thing. But really, I would suggest, stay overnight, and then you could get there as we open. Park opens at 9, and we're here till 4:30, so you could get a good 8 hours of collecting in.
Great. Okay, any other questions, anybody? Again, a great program, and I've heard a lot about Penn, Dixie. I've never been there because I'm always stuck in York County, Pennsylvania. I can't get out of York County. They might have a probation thing on me too, that I can't leave York County.
We could send you some fossils, Jerry.
Actually, we're probably in May. We're probably going to be doing a fossil trip with the Buttonwood Nature Center to my favorite Devonian site in New Ringgold, Pennsylvania, which is in Schuylkill County. I proclaim it as the best Devonian site in Pennsylvania, by the way. Dr. Stokes. Anyway, you'll hear more about that maybe when we come back and see you in February.
Yeah, is that the fish site?
No, we have found wood there.
Oh, wood. Okay.
And we also have found the tops of the crinoids also. All right. So what did the frog order at the burger shop? He ordered French fries and a Diet Coke. I thought you might like that one. And because we may not see you until just before Valentine's Day, guys, this is a little warning, okay? Actually, I need to put my other glasses on to read this. uh, what did the baker say to his sweetheart? So, what did the husband say to his sweetheart? I'm donut nuts about you. I'm donut nuts about you. Hey, I do want to. I discovered it just before we came on the air tonight. The new edition of Pennsylvania Geology is out online. If you don't subscribe to it, it's a free deal. You just get an email saying that Pennsylvania Geology magazine's out. The new one just came out today, and there's an article in there about a brand new meteorite that landed in Pennsylvania, up in Carbon County back in May of 2023. I was not aware of it. It did go through the back window of a car and actually landed in a quart and a half bucket of Breyer's natural vanilla ice cream. So we just wasted vanilla ice cream, my favorite type, by the way. But there's a great article in there about the that two friends of mine, Bob Smith and John Barnes, retired from the Pennsylvania Geologic Survey, did research on it and verified it was a meteorite. So that's a brand new one to our list. And of course, last year I did a program for you all on the meteorites of Pennsylvania. So anyway, check out our online magazine's called Pennsylvania Geology. It's a free thing, and it's always some good, interesting reading. Okay, remember 2 weeks. You will not get a Zoom invite because we'll be off that night. Renee, you want to say anything?
Just have a wonderful month until we see you again.
And our video for tonight, if in case you want us to watch it again or show it to friends, will be on our website at jonesgeo.us. Brand new website, by the way, if you haven't been in here for a while. jonesgeo.us is our website, and it will be on our website in about an hour from now. So, as all of our Zoom rock rooms are. So, be safe in the next month that we see you, actually. And I'll be sending you some Buttonwood Nature Center stuff, I promise you. And I have another article in storage that Ken Fraser had already sent me about an archaeological find in Maryland, which is quite interesting to read. So I'll be sending that out too. So we always appreciate your participation. Tonight we had 40 people in the room. That's a great crowd because of Dr. Stokes, I'm sure. And we'll be seeing you. Everybody take care.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Dr. Stokes.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Night, everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, Dr. Stokes.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
Renee.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again.
Mike will be in touch
Yes, I will.
when he comes down from orbit.
Dr. Stokes, did you see I did send you where's he gone? I think he's gone, huh? All right. Bye, guys.
All right. We'll see ya.